trying a new tactic to painting where I run up to my canvas really fast so as to catch it by surprise. I'm really excited about doing this. I think it's gonna work. Here we go. I've never run up to a painting in order to surprise it, but I use that as an example to demonstrate how necessary it is to surprise our paintings. Really, it's surprising ourselves in the process of making a painting. It's allowing us to explore areas that are unknown or that are just uncomfortable, especially if you're a painter who is settled into a process that you really know, that is very familiar, like an old kind of comfortable chair. No. You need to be in a chair that is constantly making you uncomfortable, so you have to get up out of it, right? And if you haven't gotten to that place and you're more of like a novice to intermediate painter and you're still searching for your voice, you're still searching for a reflection of your nature as a painter, then you have to force yourself into situations that are constantly uncomfortable, that are constantly unknown. Because that is where you find yourself. It's not in the areas that you know, it's in the areas that are still unknown. That's where you find more of who you are. I force myself oftentimes into that kind of place when I make paintings almost every single time. Even if it's a subject that I've painted multiple times, each experience gives me something new. I don't want to miss that. So I want to address 3 great points that were brought up by viewers from the previous video. One was about the Vermeer painting analysis and the black door. Why wasn't that dealt with? The second is about the appropriation and application of what can be learned from looking at paintings and studying other painters, and how that applies to one's own work and process. The third is Stanley Lewis, and I'll share with you 3 really important things that I learned from him. The first is this: things are not as they seem. They are stranger and more compelling than the mind readily accepts. The second is everything seen and not seen is a decision of the intellect, and that alters your state of awareness. The third is allow yourself to be surprised and live with wonder. These things will in time find their way into your work. It is a change from the inside out. Vermeer is the type of painter whose work needs to be analyzed on a variety of different levels to really get a fuller sense of what is happening in the painting. In the last video, I primarily dealt with 2 transparent planes and the dualistic function of those planes and how they affected the spatial arrangement in the painting. Okay, so first we establish that the facade of the building, where the green shutters are, that is a plane that is set behind the opening of the alleyway, but is equal to the figure in the doorway to the right. Look at how Vermeer brilliantly prioritizes the value, color, the temperature shift of the outside of the building. So what Vermeer is doing is connecting the figure that is in the doorway to the facade of that building with the green shutters, so that as we read the saliency of the transparent plane of the alleyway on the left, as we read that moving forward, we perceive the building and the figure that is attached to the building. We perceive that moving back ever so slightly. The area on the far right with the red shutter and the white area just beneath the red shutter moves just in front of the space of the doorway and the other side of that building, but still set behind the transparent plane of the alleyway and the ground plane. So it's a very tight spatial arrangement, but it is fine-tuned. Now the black door, if I cover up the alleyway with my finger and I compare the location of the black door to the location of the opening on the far right, I find that the black door is still forward. But when I look at the way Vermeer painted the black door, the door actually recedes into space, because Vermeer doesn't paint a door, he paints a path. He paints a pathway that leads you into a dark space. And he uses the laws of perspective to do that. And so what you have is a dualistic function of an element. At once it is forward and stable, and it recedes away from the viewer in a way that is surprising and jarring. As it recedes, the alleyway moves forward. So what you have is something like this. Look at the form on the bottom of this painting that is developed. Look at how it protrudes from the surface of the painting and moves into the space of the viewer. Now this geometric form is established by the way Vermeer appeals to our sensibilities through the function of these elements in the painting. You can see by the cloud form and its directional movement in relation to the spatial location of the buildings, how that creates a cylindrical volume in space that is also felt. And again, these forms are not readily seen. It requires a lot of time spent with the painting to interpret these forms. But the same thing happens in nature, all around us, all the time. And these painters who were composing and making paintings in this way, like Vermeer, so many after him and so many before him, I believe were responding to visual phenomena and finding ways to communicate that creatively and ingeniously in their paintings. Okay, so how do you take that and apply it to your work? Well, you wait until something like that strikes you with what you see, and then you figure out how to paint it. And there lies the great struggle in painting.